Konnichiwa everyone, welcome back to my channel. Whenever people talk about learning Japanese, one of the first things they usually say is Japanese is so difficult. And honestly, I understand why. There are 3 writing systems, thousands of kanji, unfamiliar grammar structures, different levels of politeness, and words that sometimes seems impossible to translate directly to English. When you see all that at once, Japanese can feel less like a language and more like an impossible puzzle. I used to feel the same way. Before I understood how the language worked, I assumed I needed to memorize everything perfectly before I could make any real progress. But after studying Japanese, preparing for the JLPT, and eventually become much more comfortable with the language, I started realizing that Japanese often feels hardest before you understand how to approach it. That doesn't mean Japanese has no difficult parts. Of course, it does, but difficulty and impossibility are not the same thing. With the right study order, realistic expectations, and methods that match the way you learn, Japanese becomes much more manageable than it's appeared. So in this video, I want to talk about 5 common beliefs that make Japanese learners feel unnecessarily discouraged and why they may not be completely true. The first misconception is that Japanese is automatically harder than every other language, especially other East Asian languages. For English speakers, Japanese may look extremely intimidating because of hiragana, katakana, and kanji, but every language has its own challenges. Mandarin, for example, uses tones, which means that the same basic sound can have completely different meanings depending on how your voice rises and falls. Learners from non-tonal language backgrounds may find this very difficult because pronunciation isn't only about producing the right sound, it also affects the meaning of the word. Korean has a much simpler writing system with Hangul, but its grammar, horrific speech, sentence endings, and levels of politeness can still be very complex. Other languages may have grammatical genders, irregular verbs, difficult pronunciation, or complicated case systems. Japanese is not necessarily harder, it's simply difficult in a different way. The problem is that when we begin learning a language, we usually compare everything to our native language. If Japanese expresses an idea differently from English, we immediately think it is illogical. But from a Japanese speaker's perspective, that structure is completely natural. Instead of asking, why does Japanese work like this? I found it much more helpful to ask, how does a Japanese speaker organize this idea? That small mindset shift made unfamiliar grammar feels less like a collection of string rules and more like a different way of thinking. Sometimes a grammar point won't make sense immediately, and that is completely normal. Your brain needs time and repeated exposure to build a new patterns. Not understanding something on the first day doesn't mean you are bad at Japanese. It often just means that you haven't seen enough examples yet. Another belief I hear quite often is that kanji only manageable for people who already know Chinese. It is true that Chinese speakers may recognize many characters and meanings more quickly, but that doesn't mean kanji becomes effortless for them. Japanese readings, vocabulary, pronunciation, and usage can still be completely different. More importantly, nobody is born knowing how to read kanji. Even native Japanese children learn characters gradually over years. They begin with basic ones, see them repeatedly in words and sentences, and slowly build their knowledge. When beginners see a complicated kanji, they often view it as one giant picture, but once you learn common components, radicals, many difficult kanji start looking like combinations of smaller and more familiar parts. It's similar to seeing a long English word. At first, it looks overwhelming, but once you recognize the prefix, root, and suffix, the word becomes easier to understand. I also think kanji becomes much harder when you try to memorize characters in isolation. Instead of learning a kanji as a shape with 5 separate readings, learn it through useful vocabulary. For example, rather than memorizing gaku alone, learning words such as gakuse, gakko, and ryugakuse, each word gives you a reading, a meaning, and a real context. One resource that helped me organize this process was Mochi Kanji. The app has structured courses from geography N5 to N2, as well as courses connected to textbooks and professional topics, so I didn't have to randomly choose what to study. Each lesson teaches kanji together with vocabulary, readings, audio, example sentences, writing practice, and quizzes. The feature I found most helpful was the golden time. Instead of reviewing every word at the same frequency, the app tracks what I have studied and brings vocabulary back around the time I am likely to forget it. This made my reviews much more manageable because I was focusing on the words that actually needed attention. Kanji is still challenging, but it becomes much less intimidating when you stop treating it as a test of raw memory and start learning it as a system of meaningful patterns. Japanese grammar can feel confusing because the sentence structure is very different from English. English usually follows a subject-verb-object order, while Japanese often places the verb at the end. Subjects may also disappear when the context is already clear, and particles are used to show the role of each word. At the beginning, I tried to translate Japanese sentences word for word. This created a very unnatural English sentence and made the grammar feel even more complicated. Later, I realized that Japanese grammar makes much more sense when you understand what each part is doing rather than forcing it into English structure. When you encounter a new grammar patterns, try breaking it into smaller pieces. Look at the verb form, particles, and familiar structure inside. Ask yourself how the parts connect and what kind of feeling the full expression creates. You don't need to analyze every sentence forever. The goal is to understand basic logic first and then see grammar repeated in real situations. After enough exposure, you will stop translating the structure consciously and begin recognizing it as one complete pattern. This is also why creating to your own examples helps so much. Reading a grammar explanation can make you feel like you understand it, but using it in a sentence shows whether you can actually produce it. Even a simple personal example can make the pattern much easier to remember. Japanese grammar is not random, it is simply organized information differently. Once you stop expecting it to behave like English, many structures start becoming much more predictable. Japanese can seem completely disconnected from English, but it has actually borrowed and adapted words from several languages throughout history. The clearest influence comes from Chinese through kanji and vocabulary connected to areas such as government, education, religion, and philosophy. But modern Japanese also contains huge number of loanwords from English and other European languages. Words such as terebi, konbini, pasokon, arubaito, and restaurant are used constantly in everyday Japanese. Of course, the pronunciation and meaning may change slightly after entering Japanese, so you still need to learn how they are actually used. But these words can give beginners a surprisingly large amount of vocabulary very quickly. One of the most damaging beliefs is that you need to become fluent before speaking to Japanese people traveling to Japan or living there. Of course, stronger Japanese will make life easier, especially when dealing with official documents, work situations, medical appointments, or complicated conversation, but you do not need perfect Japanese to begin communicating. In fact, perfect Japanese cannot come before speaking because speaking is how you improve. You will make mistakes, forget words, use the wrong particles, and sometimes say something in a very unnatural way. That is not evidence that you should stop. It is the evidence that you are finally using the language. When I first started speaking, I wanted to prepare every sentence before saying it. I was worried about pronunciation, grammar, and whether there was more natural expression. By the time I had finished checking everything in my head, the conversation had already moved on. Eventually, I realized that communication matters more than perfection. Native speakers do not expect beginners to speak flawlessly. If your meaning is clear, the conversation can continue, and every real interaction teaches you something that textbook cannot. A conversational level can already help you order food, ask for direction, introduce yourself, shop, and handle many daily situations. You can continue improving while using Japanese you already know. Waiting for fluency before speaking is like waiting to become fit before exercising. Speaking is not the final reward for learning Japanese, it is a part of the process. If Japanese has ever felt impossible for you, I hope that this video helped it make feel a little more approachable. Challenges are a normal part of learning, but they don't say anything negative about your ability. They simply show you what to work on next. Let me know in the comments which part of Japanese feels most difficult for you right now. Is it kanji, grammar, listening, speaking, or keigo? I would love to hear about your experience. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Japanese learning tips. Mata ne! See you in the next video.